Hello, this is Pharma College, Department of Accounting and Management, course title, Business Research Method for Year 2, Credit Hour 3, Academic Year 2020, by Instructor Tuguyako. Dear students, I think you have learned some introductory concept on research on the first part. The concept you touched on the first lesson are the definition of research, how research work is processed or worked, or how we just try to process the research, and how scholars define the research methods versus with research methodology concept. And finally, you have learned objectives of research. I think you did it well. And let's come to the second lesson. This is considered as the second topic for you in this lesson, which is 1.3. 1.3 is about classification and types of research. In classification of research, we do have two broad classification of research. The first one is research in physical or natural science and research in social or human science. In physical science, here it mainly concerns on things. Things. Which can be put to laboratory test under any guided manual or condition. So here in case of physical science, there are guiding conditions, guiding situations, or we may say manuals, in order to put things into the laboratory test. So those research is mainly concerned with the physical occurrence or the physical phenomena upon which man has complete control on it. And research in social science is mainly concerned on human behavior, which is influenced by so many factors. I think those factors can be here the physical factors. These physical factors, they can be semantic factor. We can say them as a semantic factor, the physical factor. The social factor. I think issue related with the community, issue related with the public. Here we do have temperamental factor. This temperamental factor can be unpredictable. These temperamental factors are unpredictable. They are explosive in nature. Here we do have psychological factor. This psychological factor can be a mental issue, a mental factor, or emotional issues. Here we do have economic factor. The economic factor, it is the issue of finance, the issue of money. You can say monetary issue. Here, the issue of fiscal in econometric term, fiscal having monetary value, or is the issue of cost effectiveness. So those are some of the factors which may affect or influence the human behavior. So we can never hope to put such human beings to laboratory test, even if it is done. Their responses will not be natural, but they are subjected to the awareness of artificial conditions. Let's see here the basic types of research is as follows. The basic types of research. The first one is the descriptive. That means descriptive versus with Analytical. Let's see here the first one, which is the descriptive one. It includes the survey and the fact-finding inquiries of different kinds. This type of research mainly focuses on expanding knowledge on current issues, through a process of data collection. They are used to describe the behavior of a sample population. This type of research is used to describe the behavior of a sample population, but not a total population. So the major purpose of this type of research is, describing or description of the state of affairs as it exists at what? Present. On this type of research, only one variable required to conduct the study. Only one variable is required to conduct what? The study. The main purpose is what? Here, describing, you may say explaining or validating the finding. So, the main characteristics of this type of research or this method is that the researcher has no control over the variable as such as of the first one. He can only mean that the researcher can only report what has happened or what is happening, or the happened solution or occurrence. Here, in order to check the frequency or the level of what shopping, preference of what people, or demand of people, or similar that. In descriptive research also, it is known as statistical research, and it answers here the WH questions such as who, what, where, when, why, and what, how. This cannot be used to investigate the fundamental relationship where one variable affects what? Another. The causal relationship means the fundamental relationship. In other words, this have a low requirement of what? The internal validity. The description is used for what? The frequencies, averages, and other statistical calculations. The second one is the analytical one, the analytic research. This is the so-called investigative or diagnostic type of research. We may say this type of research is a so-called investigative or diagnostic type of research. It is sometimes called as critical research. For that, the researcher has to use facts or information already available, and it is in order to analyze those facts to make a critical evaluation of what? The material. For this, some scholars say this type of research is a so-called critical research or investigative research or diagnostic research. Let's come to this applied one, the applied versus fundamental one. Research can either be applied, which is a so-called action research, or fundamental or basic or pure research. It's better to see the first one, the applied one. The applied research, it is, as the name indicates, the applied research is a so-called action research. It is a so-called action research, or we may say this type of research is a so-called field research or action research. It is aimed at finding a solution for an immediate problem. This immediate problem is facing one, a society or a business organization or a business entity, any business firms. Whereas this one, again also, it is the so-called action research, as I told you before, or it mainly focuses on analyzing and solving the real-life problem or immediate problem which is facing to what? The society. The study helps to solve practical problem using scientific methods. Okay. The studies play an important role in solving issues that impact the overall well-being of what? Humans. So it is mainly concerned on what? Application. It is conducted to identify the social, maybe economic or political trend. For example, here finding a specific cure of a disease is a good example which is mentioned under applied research. Finding a specific cure of what? For a disease. Or finding a specific action on, price ceiling on COVID-19 is a good example. Finding a specific action on, price ceiling here, what? On time of COVID-19. So this is the applied research one. Again, the second one is fundamental research. Fundamental type of research. This is mainly concerned on what? Generalization and with the formulation of what? Theory. Formulation of what? Theory. This type of research, the fundamental research, is the so-called basic research. As you see here in above literature, it's mainly concerned with what? Generalization and the formulation of what? Theory. It is for the sake of knowledge. This type of research is conducted for the sake of knowledge, for advancement of knowledge. It aims at adding new organizing knowledge, to what? The existing ones. For example, what is the cause of day and the night? What the cause of day and the night? Why it is lighting? Why it is lighting? So this kind of problems are addressed on conducting this type of research. You might just take what? A critical knowledge. So advancing knowledge. Let's see the third one here. It is quantitative versus with what? Qualitative type of research. The quantitative versus with what? Qualitative type of research. This quantitative research is based on the measurement of quantity or amount. It is based on measurement of what? Quantity or amount or number or magnitude, you may say. It is applicable, this type of research is applicable to the phenomena that can be expressed in terms of what? Quantity. It's a structured way of collecting data and analyzing it to draw a conclusion. So this type of research uses what? A computational and a statistical process to collect what? To collect data and analyze data. It is all about what? Numbers. This type of research is mainly about what? It is all about what? Numbers. It involves a larger population, More people means more data. More people means more data. With more data, you may just analyze. You cannot find more accurate result. This method uses close-ended. This type of research uses close-ended questions. This is why, because researchers are typically looking together the statistical what? Data. Let's come to see the second one, the qualitative research. Qualitative research. This type of research is, on the other hand, is mainly concerned with what? The qualitative phenomena. That means phenomena relating to or involving quality or kind. It's a method that collects, this research is a method that collects data using, conversational method or informal method. Data may be collected for this type of research are what? On conversational method. So here what? Non-numeric term is used. Non-numeric term. This type of research is mainly concerned with qualitative phenomena. Qualitative phenomena. In case of this research type, one-to-one interview is conducted. One-to-one interview is conducted, which is used to, prepare what? Question in advance. Focus group discussions, text analysis are mentioned under this type of research. Let's come to that, this one, this type of research is the so-called motivation research. Motivation research. But this one is, the qualitative research is more employ mathematical model. Don't forget this. It employ mathematical model. This model is, it is simply a simplified representation of the real world process. For example, a model like, the demand of orange depends on the price of orange. For example, the demand of orange depends on the price of orange, and maybe other factors can affect the demand of what? Orange. As such like what? The price of orange. The price of orange is one variable. Let's see the conceptual versus with empirical one. The conceptual research is that related to abstract idea. It is related to what? The abstract idea. Some abstract means it is simply non-figurable or mental idea. Or here what? Theory means the concepts. It is generally used by philosophers. The one who seeks what? The truth. Or logicians. And here what? Thinkers, to develop new concepts or to interpret what? The existing one. On the other hand, the empirical research. This type of research is a so-called experiential research, or some scholars says it is a so-called practical research. It relies on what? Experience or observational law. It is, data-based research. It is a so-called data-based research. It is a so-called experimental research. Means, it is investigational type of research. So it is, it is data-based research coming up with what? Conclusions which are capable of being verified by observation or what? Experiment. We can also call it as experimental type of what? Research. So, this other type of research is, just I would like to give you reading assignment. Dear student, I think you are more motivated to read this. So take this one as a reading assignment to you. And here again also, this essential qualitative research approach also is reading assignment for you. And the case study method is also reading assignment for you. If you have any, you may just contact me. I may try to just explain and verify again. It's better to see the second part, which is the research process. How research work is conducted. Here we do have what? Steps. The sequential steps. Firstly, the researcher can try to define the research problem. After defining the research problem, you are required to conduct what? The review of what? The literature. Review concepts and the theories are essential for the defined problem. Reviewing the previous finding, the other researchers' finding, you know. Then after, you may just try to formulate what? Hypothesis. And here, after formulating, you know, the tentative statement, you may just try to design what? The research, including the sample design. Then after, you may just try to collect some related data, the data which is relevant to what? The designed research. Then you may just try to analyze what? This collected data. Then you may just try to interpret, and finally what? You may report the work. So, in short, this is the research process in flow charts. So, having this in your mind, you might just easily watch some essential points which are addressed, you know, in each step. If you read more, you might get lots. For example, here in problem discovery and the definition, it is considered that the first step in a research process or in a research, flow chart or steps, it is simply the so-called symptom detection. Here problem means management problem. The formulation of problem is often more essential than its solution. So firstly, you just try to formulate what the problem. This is according to the saying of Albert Einstein, Albert Einstein, who is a so-called the father of modern physics. The father of modern physics. Review of literature. This is a concept and the theories regarding to the problem of what you study. Reviewing the previous research finding, others research finding in the area of what you study, in your problem area. Thirdly, here formulation of research objectives, questions and the hypothesis. Discussing the problem with what your colleagues, examining the data and the report, developing any tentative assumption, if any. And other steps also follow. So read these steps deeply. It's better to discuss, the 11th one, which is hypothesis testing. In this case, this is a concept which is the so-called hypothesis testing. It is inferential analysis concept. In this case, the first one is chi-square test. Here it says chi-square test. It is, in this case, you are intended to test how likely it is that an observed distribution is due to chance. It is also called as goodness of fit. This chi-square test is also known as goodness of what? Fit. Because this chi-square testing measures how well the observed distribution of data fits. How, the observed distribution of data fits with the distribution that it is expected if the variables are independent. So, this is commonly used for testing. The chi-square testing is commonly used for testing the relationship between categorical variables. Let's come to see the second one, which is F-test. The F-test is the ratio of, testing the ratio of two quantities that are expected to roughly equal under the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis, which produces an F static of what? Opportunity. It is in order to reject the null hypothesis that produces the group means are equal. So it is the value you get when you run an ANOVA test, or regression analysis, find out if the means between two populations are significantly different. When you come to the z-test, it is used to determine, whether two populations, means the two data, the population means, are different when the variance are known and the sample size is large. It is a number representing how many standard deviation above or below the mean population, a score derived from the z-test. So, sometimes g value are equal to plus 1, or it is 1 standard deviation above the mean. When you come to see the t-test, it means this type of inferential static. T-test is a type of inferential static which is used to determine if there is a significant difference between the means of two groups, which may be related to certain features. T-test is used as a hypothesis testing tool, which allows testing of an assumption applicable to what? The total population. Which allows testing of what? An assumption which is applicable to what? A population. So t-test, when you test t-test, it tells you how significant differences between groups are. The other one is regression analysis. This is, it's mainly concerned on describing and evaluating the relationship between a given variable, often called dependent variable, and one or more variables which are assumed to influence the given variable, often called independent or explanatory variable. For example, when you just equate the equation as such like this, think from your mathematics concept. In your mathematics concept, y is equivalent to 2 a plus bx. This a is considered as a regression coefficient and b is considered as unknown parameters that we assume using sample data. So, regression analysis is used. It is mostly, in most cases, commonly used tools in econometric work. When you come to just correlation, in order to see correlation analysis, it is a statistical method which is used to evaluate the strength of relationship between two quantitative variables. Let's see, parties of research report. Here we do have executive summary, research overview, implementation strategy, technical appendix. Those all things are, parties considered in what? Research report. You must consider these things. You have just tried to see the report writing. How research work or a research report is, written. It is an effective communication of research finding. Maybe you may just communicate with what? Your society. Maybe you may just try to communicate with your customer, means clients or government, industries, others, scholars, libraries, and blah blah. Here, motivation in research. The possible motives of doing research may be, to have or to earn bachelor's degree here. There's a desire to get research degree along with its consequential benefits. Desire to face any challenges involving unsolved problem. Here, desire to get intellectual joy of doing some creative work. Here, desire to serve the society or service to society. Desire to get respectability, being honorable, Characteristics of good research. Good research can be what? Here it is systematic. It can be systematic. Good research is systematic. Means can be what? Ordered. If it is ordered, if it is what? Organized, methodological. So these senses can make a research can be what? Good research. It can be here what? Good research is logical. It can be rational. It should provide common sense to the audience. The consistency, it is consistency or coherent, being reasonable, And here, good research is empirical. It is practical, realistic. Good research is replicable. It is redoing. This allows the research result to be what? Verified by replicating the study and thereby building a sound basis for decision. The criteria for good research. The purpose of the research should be clearly defined. The research procedure used to be described in sufficient detail to permit another researcher to repeat the researcher for further advancement, keeping the opportunity of what has already been attained. The procedural design of the research should be carefully planned to yield results that are the objectives as possible. The researcher should report with complete frankness flaws in personal design and estimate their effects upon the finding. The analysis of data should be sufficiently adequate. Conclusion should be here confined to those justified by the data for the research and limited to those for which the data provide an adequate base. So all ethical issues have to be considered in research work. Greater confidence in research is warranted if the researcher is experienced, has good reputation, and research and it is person of integrity. And this is all above points to some extent are the essential points in chapter 1. Dear student, it is end of the chapter 1. And I wanted to say you have a nice study time. Thank you very much for your good attending. It's not only for audiences, it is for my students and also for other audiences. Let us fight COVID-19 together with keeping healthy specialists' advice. Have a nice study time. Thank you very much. Thank you.